From the part 1 video about structures, it's obvious that structures are more complex than just a simple integer or double or a character. We already know that we can create arrays of those simple types, but we can also create an array of structures, and it's not that much different from an array of those simple types. Just keep in mind that we're dealing with a container, the array, that contains other containers, that is, the structures. Going back to the previous video, we had 3 variables of type car_info. They were named car1, car2, and car3. Let's change those into an array of car_info structures. We've already got our declaration of the car_info structure type beginning on line 6. The differences start with a change to line 17. Instead of declaring 3 separate variables, now let's declare an array of 3 car_info structures. First, I'll comment out the code that was already there. Then I'll declare an array of 3 car_info structures. Keep in mind that the cars variable is an array, which means it contains 3 separate car_info structures. I'll run the debugger so that we can get a better picture of what's going on. Once the debugger is running, I can set a watch on the cars array. This number in hexadecimal is the array's address in RAM, because it is an array. When I click the arrow, it's going to expand the array so that I can see that it has 3 slots, numbered 0, 1, and 2. I can click the arrows by each slot, and the display will expand to show me the different members of each structure in the array. These individual structures don't have names anymore. Now they have slot numbers, and I can access each structure based on its slot number. We already know that we can initialize an array by using the equal sign and curly braces. When you have an array of structures, each structure's initialization has to be contained inside curly braces too. In this example, I'm going to fully initialize the car_info structure in slot 0 and partially initialize the one in slot 1. When I run the debugger, we can see how the structure in slot 0 has all of its data because of that initialization. Then we look at the structure in slot 1 and see that the partial initialization put the make, model, and year into that structure's members. And as we've seen before, it gave default values of 0 to the mileage and value members. Finally, looking at the structure in slot 2, we see that it has empty strings for the make and model and zeros for the year, mileage, and value members. Those default values of empty strings and zeros are there because the array is partially initialized. To access the members of a particular structure in the array, you have to remember one important thing. That is, cars is an array. It's not a structure. So when you're trying to decide whether to use the brackets first or the dot operator first, remember, it's an array of structures. That means you use the array notation, that is the brackets, first, then the dot operator. To say that another way, the brackets will take you to the right structure in the array, and then the dot operator will take you to the right member of that particular structure. I'm going to change some information about the structure in slot 0. So on lines 20 through 23, I'm accessing the structure in slot 0, then the specific member of that structure. Next, I'll print out the information contained in the structure in slot 0. If I wanted to print out the information about all of the vehicles in the array, I'll just use a for loop. I also have to change the 0 slot number and put my loop counter variable in there instead. And since the value member is a double, I'll add the code to make sure it prints with 2 decimal places. Here's what that looks like when it's running. I could also get the user's input for any of the vehicles in the array. Here's how I'd ask for the information about the vehicle in slot 0. The user can type in their values, and the output shows that those values went into the members of the vehicle in slot 0. I can also get the values for the structures in the array by getting input from a file. Notice on line 18, the array is not initialized at all. That means it contains complete junk. I've created a file named vehicles.txt, and that's what I'll open on line 21. Starting on line 22 is the basic form for using a text file. Here's what the contents of the file look like. Notice that each vehicle has 5 lines and that they are in a very specific order: the make, the model, the year, the mileage, and the value. And that's true for all 3 of those vehicles. My input will have to match the order of the data in the file. Once again, I'm using a for loop to cycle through the whole array. On lines 26 and 27, I'm bringing in the make and model. Lines 28 through 30, I'm getting the input for the year, mileage, and value, respectively. And then line 31 has to be there because the next thing that's going to happen will be to input a string when the loop goes back to the top. Running the program shows that the file input was successful. When you have an array of structures, input and output is not much different from what you've already seen. Where a lot of people get messed up is trying to put the dot and then the brackets. When you have an array of structures, the array notation has to come first to indicate which structure you're talking about. Once you've established that, then the dot operator will give you access to the members of that particular structure.